Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Buy Black for Life. Buy Black for Life. Good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Wellness Wednesday. So come on in. If you are watching live or you're watching on replay, do hashtag replay. Tell us where you are watching from. Good evening. My name is Jerome Hurt, founder and CEO of Buy Black for Life. Welcome one, welcome all. Thank you for being here. And this is an important conversation that I hope everyone will be able to sit down and listen to and take heed to the wisdom that is about to be shared with us. So I'm going to start off right now with a icebreaker for those who may be watching or for our amazing guests. And the icebreaker is, what, if any, vaccine did you get? And if you haven't gotten the vaccine, what is your preference? Do you want to get the vaccine or do you not? And why? If the answer is I'm not getting the vaccine. So if you heard the icebreaker, share that in your comments, and I'm going to ask that of our amazing guests. But before I do, let me just read to you who we have. We have Ayanna Fortson, and she is the VP for the National Urban League's Housing Division, overseeing their housing work. Ayanna earned her undergraduate degree from the University of Pittsburgh and her master's in urban planning from Virginia Commonwealth University. And I know VCU very well. Ayanna is a forever Steelers fan. You had to go there, didn't you?
Of course.
From Pittsburgh. And she knows no greater joy than visits to New Orleans to enjoy a beignet. You know I know about beignets. You know I know about beignets.
That's my obsession. It's my annual trip that I didn't take last year, unfortunately.
So you will make up for it. So Buy Black for Life, welcome Pittsburgh's own Ayanna Fortson. Welcome, my sister.
Hello, everyone. To answer your question, I got the Pfizer vaccine.
You got the Pfizer vaccine. So let's talk about that. When did you get the vaccine?
Since it's Pfizer, it's 2 shots. So I got it on February 26th. It was on Fridays because I wanted to be sure that if I had any, feelings of, sickness or tiredness, that I would be able to have the weekend to sleep it off. So I got it on Friday, February 26th, and then I got my follow-up on March 19th.
Okay. So I got on March 11th, I got the Johnson & Johnson, and I got it. My reasoning for getting it is I miss my children and I want to be able to see my babies. 2 of them live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and my oldest lives in Japan. So this is my way to be able to hug my babies again. I miss them. And they're not babies. The oldest is about to be 35 and the youngest is about to be 29. I miss them. So I took the shot so that I could have the opportunity to see them. What made you decide? Because I know in New York you don't have the option to choose which shot you get. But what made you decide I'm going to get the vaccine?
Well, I'm not so sure about now, but at the time where I got it, you did not have an option. You went if you qualified. I qualified because I have asthma. And so that is part of why I wanted to get the vaccine. Also, just seeing the images of people in ICU and not being able to have family around really scared me a lot because I've been with family in the ICU as they were, declining. And I've seen other people in the ICU who did not have family support. And it just felt so tragic to have to see people in their days, in their lives without family around. And so not only for my health and my family's health, but also just that imagery of ending things that way, I couldn't get out of my mind. Also, right before this was called a pandemic, when this
Right.
was just a conversation and it was something you kind of talked about, and you said that's something that happens over there. I got a cold, and I travel a lot for work. Used to travel a lot for work.
Right. Right.
March 10th, 2020 was my last one. So, you know, I had a cold, and it seemed to have been triggered by the air on the plane. I didn't know why. I didn't know it at the time, but all I knew was I was on that plane and I was like, like I couldn't stop the cough, and it was just the cold. But I remember seeing the flight attendant's look of horror on his face too, and I just felt, I was like, I'm never going to put someone through that again. I'm never going to be the cause for someone else's, you know, fear or concern, or definitely not sickness. So when I got off that flight, because I had a cold, and I saw that look as well, and it was starting to come in the news, I got off the flight and I told my boss, I'm staying in the airport. I'm going to do my work. I'm going to take my meeting from here because I'm not sure what's happening. But it was a sense of concern for those around me.
Right. Now, you know my story, and thank you, because you were one of the people to say, I prayed for you, Jerome, and I thank you for that. I thought it was over, right? So did you ever get COVID? Were you ever diagnosed with COVID?
No, I never did. I am very grateful that I was given the option to stay home during this time. Everyone didn't have that option. A lot of people have been working this whole time. But given the option, I opted to not go to parties that people I'll just say this, I opted the extra careful life. So I started hanging out with my friends a lot on Zoom. So it was kind of weird. It was almost as if my social life in a way got expanded and more robust, because I was able to hang out with friends across the country in a way that felt like, well, at this point, everyone is the same distance from me, because I had a friend who lived 10 minutes away and I wasn't going to see her either. It made the world feel so much different.
Right. So you had the first shot, you said, on a Friday. What date in February?
February 26th.
So how did you feel after that first shot?
After the first shot, my left shoulder, so I got my left arm, my left shoulder it honestly just felt like I had a personal trainer who really wanted to work out my arm. Like they just really had a thing for this one shoulder, and they were just focused. And so it was like an intense personal training session had occurred, but only focused on that one area, as if anyone cares about one shoulder. Right. But that was my only symptom. It probably lasted 3 or so days, and then it went away. But it wasn't anything over the top. I was fine.
So you had your second vaccine what day?
Friday, March 19th.
And any symptoms after that?
Yeah. So immediately, barely. So that was, I was actually thinking like, oh, well, I'm nothing's going to happen. So immediately
and you
after,
thought that because of the first one, you were like,
right. Yeah. No, the first one, I didn't feel much. The second one, I felt like probably a quarter of that pain. It was like, I kind of, maybe I was just swinging my arm funny that day, or had a heavy bag. Like it wasn't not personal training intensity. It was like I just did a little something extra. So I was fine, and that whole week I was fine. I was relieved because it was my birthday week. Actually, like I was kind of like, should I do this now? What if I'm, not feeling well in the same ways other people haven't felt well, meaning they were just lethargic or whatever. So knowing my birthday was March, well, the following week, I still got it done, and I didn't feel anything. Like I still, went ahead and did a virtual cooking class online, and did some things, and with family, and felt fine until until and I don't know if that was your next question, but until 9 days later, honestly. So what happened was, so that Friday through that following next week, I was fine. That following Sunday, so that was 9 days after after my second Pfizer shot, then I started to feel some tingling in my feet, the bottoms of my feet. It was on that Sunday night, and I was like, this feels a little, yes, it's weird.
Right.
Nothing. I'm sure it's nothing. Let me continue watching TV and prepping myself mentally to go to work tomorrow, remotely. And that was Sunday, not much. Monday, I started feeling a little bit of pain. And I was like, well, that's weird, but
And was the pain in your feet?
it was still in my feet. It was still in the bottoms of my feet. It was creeping up a little. It was maybe up an inch or two at that point.
Okay.
So, okay, fine. Tuesday, though, was where I started to get concerned, because on that Tuesday, I started feeling some cramping in my calves. And I started feeling some cramping, it was just starting to move upwards. And the pain and the tingling in my feet was starting to intensify. So by this point, it was maybe a 5 or so. It was bearable, but it was here. It was saying hello,
right.
And I couldn't ignore it. And then by that, I think Wednesday night, it had spread, the pain and tingling had spread up through my arms, like through my hands and my forearms. And then I was also extra concerned because I started to get some tingling behind my eye shortly after. But that night, I was starting to get concerned because it started to hurt so badly that I didn't think I could handle that level of pain for much longer.
Okay.
And what differentiated this from other types of pains I've experienced in my life is like, okay, if you break something, if you fracture, whatever kind of, if you, trip and bump, you can have an idea of like, okay,
where
this is going right. You know what's happening.
Right.
And I didn't know what was happening. Also, pair that with, I have a family history of some MS.
Okay.
And so I was concerned because I'm like, this is, I could feel something's happening. It feels like with my nerves.
Right.
I don't know what it is. Like, I've read in science class about, things happening with your nerves. And now it feels like it couldn't be anything but that. And so I was concerned for MS. I was also confused a bit because when I've spoken to people about their history with MS, it takes a while it tends to take a while to progress.
Right.
So considering I was feeling this feeling that I wasn't, necessarily connecting to the vaccine, but I was concerned. But considering I was feeling this feeling that had spread so rapidly from that Sunday to that Wednesday at that point, I was getting really scared. Right. And so I went to my phone and, I've had good experiences with NYU. Whoops. And so I booked, I booked with them. I booked wherever in their network I could find somebody who had an open appointment that Friday. That was my main concern, was like, let me just get in and talk to somebody. So I was like, my feet hurt. Who do I see? Right. Podiatrist. Is this MS?
You never thought that this had anything to do with the vaccine in any way, shape, or form?
I thought it might be, but then I thought, well, maybe there was some latent or, maybe I had MS that was like about to,
right.
Maybe it triggered something. That's what my
I got you. Yeah.
So I was
thinking
it's
awakened that gene of something.
It's awakened something that, and right. I wasn't basing that off of science. I was just basing this off of, It seemed like a lot of people had something, some people were feeling some things that, that went away, but they weren't sure if that had awakened something.
Right.
So I was like, maybe that's it. Mm-hmm. So I was like, who do I see? Booked with a podiatrist. I tried to look for a neurologist, and I realized I don't even know what kind of neurologist I need to see because, searching it, you're given these options. I was like, I'm confused. I'm going to book with a general practitioner because I didn't have a PCP, because I just hadn't, I hadn't met one I liked. So I had, I gone to a doctor at the end of 2019, and then I wasn't going to go back. So anyway,
And then we're in the pandemic, so being
well,
able
yeah,
to do that is difficult.
yes, exactly.
Okay.
So anyway, by that Thursday, and so what was happening to me like that Wednesday, between that Wednesday and Thursday, I was really starting to feel like I don't know how people can live with chronic pain like this. Because at this point, it was going up to like a 7, 8. And I was like, I don't know if I can work.
Right.
Which
Right.
it was such a rapid progression to that moment of like, oh, how much do people get paid on disability? And
You started mentally preparing yourself for this.
I didn't know what else to do, and all I knew was I was freaking out. So I was trying to, I figured out, let me book my appointments, and then let me try to figure out what else is going on.
And in terms of timeline, we're talking about now. We're at about 2 weeks after
yes.
you had the second vaccine, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No problem. So I frantically looked on Facebook because I find that it's best if you can advocate for yourself if you have an idea of where to steer the doctors. And
Right.
I hate that that's a reality. But so often we only have such a short period of time with doctors, and
Especially in our community. Let's be real about it. That's what we have to do.
exactly. I mean, yes, especially us, and especially if it's something that maybe is not so clear as to what it is. It's not so common, but
Right.
certainly Black people have to advocate for themselves. We have to advocate for ourselves differently than other people, because there are still persistent beliefs in medicine
Yes.
that Black people experience pain differently.
Absolutely. Black women,
Like,
right.
right,
Black
especially
women.
Black women,
Right.
going through childbirth. We die at such higher rates. I think it's over 200% greater chance. Like it's a greater chance of death while giving birth. Like it's such a. I know who I am, and I know I'm a Black woman, and I know going in I have to advocate, and I also know that people in the at the hospital, the doctors may not appreciate that, especially coming from this Black body.
Right.
But I'm going to express myself, and I'm going to make my point until until I can no longer can. And if I can't
Amen.
say it to you directly, I'm going to send an email. So there's some documentation for
I love
backup, because I've created some movement before.
Right. We call that paper trail.
Right. So I'm not afraid to push back, just because I've experienced times of having to push back in order to get a result, or I've experienced times of doctors not listening to me. Can I jump just to a childhood story?
Please. Yes. This is a conversation. Yes.
Okay. So I think when I first realized that like doctors are not God. I mean, I didn't think they were, but realized that they are very fallible. I think I was 8 or 9 years old, and I have asthma. I was hospitalized for asthma when I was about 4 or so years old, and so it could be serious for me. And I mean, it could be serious for anyone, but I had such a history, okay. And I would go to the hospital fairly frequently, to the ER. For that, again, a reason to get the vaccine. And anyway, I was about 8 or 9, and I had heart pain. I had chest pain. And so all I knew was I had chest pain. I need to go to the doctors.
Right.
And so I went to the doctors, and the doctor, I went to the hospital in Pittsburgh. The doctor, listened to me. He didn't hear anything. And he just looked at me so skeptically. And he's like, you don't. He's like, you don't. He had this smirk on his face. I will never forget that smirk. Wow. Because at that moment, all I could do was look back at him and think, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, he looked at me as if I was lying. He said, you don't. He's like, your asthma is not acting up. And like gave me this look as if I was making it up. I said, my chest hurts. That's what I know.
That's all you know.
This is so ridiculous. Anyway, fast forward to 19 years old, and I went to a doctor, and it was heartburn. It was a thing that was actually happening. Wow. But my symptoms were ignored, and and I just ended up having to endure that pain for longer. Right. And then that doctor pointed out that when you have acid reflux, that can cause GERD, or that's GERD, and that can lead to like esophageal cancers and all this stuff. So I'm like, it sounds relatively small, but I'm actually a kid coming in pain, and you're looking at me sideways. So I already had from that moment, and I had other experiences too up to that, up to this point. But
And it's a shame that in our community that we have so many of these experiences that we can refer to, that in other communities they just do not have it. And again, especially women, and we've heard and seen women in childbirth and how their pain threshold is treated differently than that of other races. So I get it. I get that thought. So now, Ayanna, you are at the point where you've made appointments to see doctors for this pain that you say is a 7 out of 10 now.
It's a 7 out of 10.
It has progressed to a 7 out of 10.
It's almost unbearable. And it's such a unique pain. It feels like pins and needles kind of with electricity going through them, but constant. Just a never ending tingling, and it was just it's hard to describe, but it was just unbearable. And so I joined a Facebook group for neuropathy, because I knew that that was at least some part of this. And so I saw that you should try to use vitamin B12. I saw that helped create some pain relief for some people when they used it. So bought that. Asked my doctor. I said, so when I'm sorry. So let me keep going. So I got my doctor's appointments. So that Friday morning, saw the podiatrist. He couldn't tell me anything. I guess that's to be expected. He's like, I need, to see your lab work. And I said, well, I'm going to my doctor later this afternoon, because I was trying to book as many appointments as possible, but I got stuck after those two, because I was like, I don't even know who else to see. And anyway, so he couldn't tell me what it was. He said he thought it could be diabetic neuropathy.
Okay.
Which
makes sense with the needles in the feet, because that's what I hear that a lot of diabetics deal with their feet. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's no problem. And I wasn't sure. I mean, I hadn't had diabetes up to that point. So I figured, well, maybe. Maybe. I mean, I do have a history of diabetes in my family as well. I didn't think it was that. And I was also concerned, like, okay, you see, a Black woman, not slim. Maybe you're just jumping to this without thinking. But again, he's the podiatrist. Didn't think too much of it. Whatever. Went straight to my next appointment. Sat there in the waiting room. Did work. Got in to see her. She asked a lot of questions, but didn't seem so concerned. I had something also going on with like my skin, and she was like, I'm concerned about that. Wasn't as concerned about my pain that I said, I just got my vaccine.
Right.
I said, can you test me for B12 deficiency? She said, why? You eat meat. I said, I've read that it can be linked to it. She said, fine, I'll run it. And she said, okay, you'll get your results back next Wednesday.
That long.
And again, I said, is there any way to rush this? Like, is there any way to rush this? And I was also thinking, like, am I going to have to go to the ER in order to get some tests, like, at that moment? But, she was like, that's the fastest we can get the labs back. And I said, I'm concerned because of how quickly this is progressing.
Right. Exactly.
I'm really in a lot of pain. And she just looked at me. She looked at me with sympathy. So I'm not, I'm not going to critique her bedside manner, but she was not paying attention to the symptoms, because as I would find out later, there were a lot of things that she should have done in that moment that she didn't do.
So you pushed past her, not satisfied with that. You continued forward looking for answers, as you should. What were your next steps after that?
My next steps, I took vitamin B12. I actually have it. I keep it right around here all the time. Right here. Huge. So I took my B12. And then I started to feel some relief.
The pain relief, though.
Some pain relief.
Okay.
Right. And my concern, mind you, was MS. So I was thinking this is going to take, if the B12 is helping with the pain, and I think this is going to take some time to progress.
Right.
She said, because my doctor said, as I left her, she said, wait for a few weeks to see a neurologist, see if the B12 helps. I shouldn't have listened. I was starting to feel a little better, and
so because you were feeling better, you were good with it.
I was kind of, but I was like, let me find out for sure if it's a mess.
Okay.
So it felt like it started to decrease. So, so let's say 2 weeks in, I was feeling like at the height of this pain, and that height of pain lasted about a week. And then so it wasn't until I guess a full month or so. So she said, go back in a few weeks. I was like, this is going away kind of. So I took an extra week. I took, 4 weeks later, I went back. So it wasn't a huge difference from what she said. Yeah. But it was quite an experience for what I did find out at that point. Mm-hmm. So I got a neurology appointment and, he's doing these tests. So a lot of them are, push against here. How are you feeling here? He's testing my reflexes. He breaks a stick in half and, one of those little thin sticks. And he's like seeing how my sensations are. And I noticed he's like seeing some, not pleased with maybe the level of reaction or feeling. Right. To when he's dragging that thing on my bottom of my feet. Because everywhere else, I'm like, I feel it. I'm like, then he gets to the bottom of my feet, and I'm feeling, I feel it, but it feels like a finger, like some regular pressure, but not like that little jab that I felt elsewhere with that stick.
Right.
And he tests my reflexes, has me walk up and down the hall, do these things, and after he does this, and he asks very carefully. Like we spent a whole half hour together, which is not that common for me with doctors.
Right.
And he asked me very carefully the progression of everything. And so he says, so he finishes the exam. Here I am. I'm in my seat. I'm already out of the door. As far as I'm concerned, I'm already home. I'm like, what am I about to eat? Because there's nothing happening here. And, he's like, so it's not MS. He's like, it's not MS. And I was like, all right. And I really am stretching like, nah, time to... Right. And he's like, it's, blah, 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 blah. That's what I heard. Because I was like, I don't have anything. It's not MS. Certainly there's nothing else happening right now. Mm-hmm. So excuse me. He said it's Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Yes, it's weird. People pronounce it different ways. I mean, it's French. People also just call it GBS. So that's a very easy way.
I called it Guillain-Barré.
Guillain-Barré. People call it Guillain-Barré. It's not. It's.
I'm not fancy, I guess.
It's Guillain. So okay. Like Guillain. Okay. Barre. Barre. Okay. But whatever.
Okay.
It's GBS. So he said it's that. He said, your doctor should have sent you to a neurologist right away, and they would have sent you to be hospitalized because, and they would have needed to do a spinal tap. And he was like, this could have been very serious. And he's talking, and I'm kind of like, no, his bedside manner was perfect. Actually, he almost was like written. He might as well have been created from a machine of a perfect bedside manner, perfect everything. He was maybe the friendliest person I've ever met in New York.
Got it. Okay.
But no, he's just explaining it, and I'm kind of confused. And I'm like, okay, but I guess I'm good now. He's like, you should be fine. You're healing. You'll likely have a full recovery. That's it. And he gave me space to ask questions. I didn't know what to ask because he really just said something words that made no sense because he didn't just say you can leave.
Right.
So what happened next? I leave the doctor's office. I send a text to my family and to a couple friends. I'm like, oh, he said it's this. I had another doctor's appointment later that day because, again, I was trying to book all my appointments.
Yes.
This was unrelated to this. It was an eye appointment. So my doctor's appointment was like 41st Street. My eye appointment was like 13th Street. So I'm like, let me just walk about these 30 blocks because I haven't gotten out as much. I love long walks and I haven't walked so much because of COVID and, now I'm vaccinated. So I'm like, let me just walk. So this is one of my first times in Manhattan, the whole pandemic. I sent a text message to them and then I'm like, listening to my music, like, I'm good. All I heard was recovery. Like, can you feel that? Like, I'm really, I got for real. I have my headphones in and I'm like, hey, I see people. Like, I'm enjoying the energy of New York.
Because that's what New York City does. And if you are not from New York, you don't understand. That's what the city does. Honestly, it does.
Well, it certainly is. It's an either or situation because I feel like the city either invigorates you or maybe it's a bit much. But for me, I'm like, I take it all in, like everything. I just get it. So I'm walking down the street listening to Jasmine Sullivan, living my best life, and I check back my phone, and people are like, "What is that?" And I said, huh? And I get another text. This is serious. Oh my god! I said, huh? Well, I'm also not trying to get hit by a car on my way down there. So I'm like, okay, I make it there, get to my doctor's office. It's an eye appointment. They have to put the eye drops in. So I'm like, in that little bit of time, I'm struggling, like, what is the situation? Because people were freaking me out.
Right.
But it turned out, so it was something I had not heard of before, but GBS is connected to, it's one of the things associated potentially with the Zika virus. So as an example, that was actually what my neurologist brought up. So I think we all were like, at that point, we remembered like the babies who were born with encephaly and had the misshapen heads. But another thing that could have happened, that did happen to some people as a result of the Zika virus, was this GBS. So it's this autoimmune disorder, and I am not a doctor. Let me just say this.
Right. We'll preface that right now. Right. Exactly.
I'm a regular person who had this thing happen, and I'm just sharing my experience.
Right.
So it's an autoimmune disorder. Basically, your immune system starts attacking your nerves, like something along the lines of your spinal cord and your brain. And so it's some type of response that shouldn't happen. And it's not exactly clear why it happens. And it's rare, and I'll get into that in a second.
Right.
But essentially it can cause all sorts of things. So I was lucky because I actually only had like the pain. And when I say I was lucky, like I didn't realize quite how lucky I was, because after I found out that this is what I have, I'm like, well, let me join a group to talk to other people, to like just hear how they're managing it. And I got to hear and read about people's experiences. So it can cause paralysis. Some people will be normal in the daytime, like when they wake up in the morning, and on a ventilator by nighttime. That's how quick. And yeah, people can be running in the daytime. And this has happened. People have been athletes, in their day-to-day lives, athletic, run in the morning, paralyzed from the neck down by nighttime. I want to be clear about one thing though. GBS is not just associated with vaccines. Okay. So I'm really sharing this information because it can happen as a result of honestly anything. But it's important that if you are experiencing this, especially after a triggering event, that you're paying attention. So that event could be COVID. There are cases you can find online where people developed GBS as a result of getting COVID and then experience some paralysis. So not taking the vaccine is not an answer. You could also get it just from the flu.
Right.
You could get it from, some people have just had diarrhea. I mean, it could be all sorts of things, but this was my experience. So I don't want to tie it to it in a way that causes fear,
Right.
but that lets people know to be aware if they have symptoms.
So my question to you is, because you said it could be triggered by an event, I guess, to the body.
Mm-hmm.
Was the vaccine that event to your body that triggered it?
Yes, my neurologist thinks it was. He
So,
said
uh,
he's seen an increase. He's good. So I thought he was going to push me away from that. Like I thought I have to kind of come to my own conclusion. And
yes.
he instantly went there. He said, "You just got the vaccine." If you look at online, you can find cases of AstraZeneca, which is not available in the U.S., but AstraZeneca being linked in other countries to GBS. As a concern. And he said, I have seen an increase in patients with GBS in recent months. So he was tying it directly to, he definitely made that connection.
So, and I know by the grace of God, and I'm so glad that you are getting better. My question is, do you regret getting the vaccine, even though, yes, you are getting better, but you went through what it is you went through?
One thing about me is I was definitely raised to believe I was like, as parents do with their children, you're one in a million. Like you have special
Blessed.
skills, you have
Yeah.
gifts. And I definitely became aware that I was that in this case.
Okay.
It is a very rare thing to contract. Only 1 in 100,000 people will get it. I don't regret it. I would regret feeling as if I wasn't, because I see the vaccine as a way to help with the pandemic. I would not have felt okay without making the attempt to try to do my part. So, this is how I found out that this is something that can happen to me as a result of it. So I don't feel, regret. I do wish I had had more information and guidance, honestly. So I did think that there would be a faster reaction if I thought from the medical system, if I felt like I had a reaction.
Right.
So the fact that I kept telling people like I just got the vaccine and like I kept trying to connect the two just in case.
Just in case. Yes.
I was hoping it wasn't connected, but just in case I was trying to make that connection for them and no one was hearing it, really concerns me, especially when I signed up for that V-Safe. After you get your vaccine, you could sign up to get a text message check-in from the CDC each week for about 6 weeks. So I signed up for that. And when I was feeling these things, I was texting them. And I was like, I wonder, as I text them, I'm like, I wonder if someone's going to call me.
No one reached back. No one reached back.
No one reached out at all. Now, what I didn't know is I guess I should have also signed up for or reported my symptoms in VAERS, VAERS, which is what I think it's vaccine. Don't quote me on this. Vaccine adverse event reaction, something like that. But it's basically where doctors and patients can report their symptoms. And so I did report it there, and I did get a request for me to send in my medical records. So I'm going to do that. I made an attempt, and it was a fax. I don't know why we have such outdated technology.
Right. Exactly. So,
yes.
In this group, Ayanna, and I know you know this, I've been intentional in having conversations with people about the vaccine, even before it came around to be my turn, because of what I went through with having COVID, because of me missing my children, also missing travel. I mean, my wife and I, we love to travel.
Right.
I made my decision based on science. That science, not just science, but it included someone I knew who was working on the vaccine. And you have to excuse my dog. She's a guard dog. She's like this big, but she's guarding the Hurt household. So please excuse my dog. So I made it based upon conversations with someone I know that is that worked on the vaccine.
Yeah.
I had conversations also with my doctor, and I had like unlimited access to her, my doctor, but also with my wife and my family, because I thought it was the decision that I'm making affects my family. It affects like my son is on his way from North Carolina here. If he's
Right.
not fully vaccinated and we're not fully vaccinated, I don't know if that's something that we're doing, if that's something that we're having. You yourself in our conversations with each other, you're clear about your decision. You want it based upon science, but you kind of feel like it's the medical field that kind of failed you in your diagnosis.
Certainly did. They certainly did. Because I want to also be clear on, just how far it could have gone.
Right.
So let me pull up these stats because it was just really eye-opening to me. So about 30% of GBS patients end up with some paralysis. The thing I was really hoping to avoid, about 10% end up on a ventilator at some point.
Scary.
And between 3 and 7% of them die. So
those are real numbers. That's real.
These are real numbers, and it is just very disappointing to not have that support from the medical field when you send out, when I sent out my text and when I met with my doctors, somewhere within those first couple of encounters, I felt like I should have had more support than I had, as opposed to that strong 15 minutes right after I got my shot.
Right.
So it really just brings, calls attention to the fact that we have to advocate for ourselves and be aware of what could happen. Yes. Because I just didn't know how to properly advocate because I didn't know what I was looking for.
Right.
And it's especially difficult to try to find things out on your own, first of all, with no medical training. But then when you're suffering, when you're actually going through something, it brought to mind, I hate to say it, but it brought to mind the Texas Roadhouse CEO who had gotten COVID. Yeah. And he ended up with that ringing in his ears. And it was just that like pain. And he killed himself. And like, it just, I don't know. It gave me such a sense of empathy for anyone who is dealing with chronic pain in a way that I don't know that I could feel otherwise without feeling that, because we all know what pain is, but we all don't know what a pain where we can't see the end.
Yeah. Where it's every single day and it won't go away.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, I consider myself, I feel like my story is I'm super lucky. I've had conversations with people, and then my other concern is, should I get another one? So the booster or whatever, I feel like I probably will not be able to. So I'm concerned around that, because I don't know.
Does that trigger it again?
Right. And I don't know after that point, after a year or so, what impact will that have on my life as far as, if I cannot get vaccinated again. So that's also a topic of conversation daily in the Facebook group, the Guillain-Barré syndrome, the GBS Facebook group. And I spoke to a woman who was concerned about it. I shared my story. And I also I sent her my Medium article. I wrote under an alias, if anyone wants to read it.
And I'm sharing that actually in the chat, your Medium. I did share that there right now for anyone to be able to read, because you shared it with me, and
yes.
Let's be real. You were like, Jerome, I don't know if I want to, put this out there, and I'm like, why not? Our people need to know this, and then you and I had a conversation about it. So I mean, I think, when we start at what we are looking to share with our community, most importantly is, number one, be aware of these symptoms, right? We're not saying not to get the vaccine, not saying that at all. So anyone who takes it in that way or takes our conversation with each other that that's not what you're going to do, you have made that decision independent of this conversation between Ayanna and I. What we're basically saying is when and if you do, be mindful of some of these things, some of the symptoms that she had, and that is the side effect of the Pfizer. Because, like your doctor said, he said he's seeing more of that because
Exactly.
of the Pfizer. So that's what we're saying. But we're also saying, don't just, you have to advocate for yourself, right? We advocate for ourselves in so many other places and things.
Mm-hmm.
And history has shown us that with medicine and how medicine is administered to our people, most importantly to Black women,
Mm-hmm.
we have to advocate. We have to keep pushing. We have to get answers, and if it means that I have to go to the next doctor because this doctor is not giving me and you did that, right? So that's something you did.
Made an attempt. I should have followed my instinct and gone right away when I was concerned about her reaction. That's what I should have done. Um, I was in an emotional state at the time.
Right.
Because I really was trying to mentally prepare myself for potentially being on disability for MS.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right. Where are you now? How are you feeling physically? What's going on with you now?
It feels really miraculous. So thankfully, by the grace of God, that the B12 provides me with pain relief, and that pain is minimal at this point.
Right.
So if I forget to take it, then I'll feel something. I'll feel pain
Really?
maybe up to I will. Okay. I'll feel maybe not necessarily the first day, but definitely a second day. The pain will jump up to like about a 2.
Okay.
So it's like hello.
It's still there. Yeah.
It's hello, but
here.
It is not screaming at me. Where I have to be concerned about will this ever end? If it stayed at exactly where it is now, which is actually most of the time, I don't feel anything at all.
Okay.
And the miracle of that, I mean,
yes.
the joy of feeling nothing. I mean, that's just a normal feeling.
Yeah.
But that when you have felt, and again, short period relative to how some other people have experienced, but feeling that for like over the course of a month and the intense pain for a week or a couple weeks, to feel nothing, I just feel like the luckiest person on earth. I just feel like it's such a blessing to just feel normal most of the time and to just be able to sit and think about whatever I was thinking of as opposed to how much pain I'm in.
I have a question. It's something I meant to ask. So you said you walked from 40, what street?
About 41st.
41st down to 13th, right? How did you feel? How did your feet feel? How did your body feel? And I know where your mind was because you were like, I'm good. I'm healing. I'm getting better. But you obviously still had this. So how did you feel after that long walk? And again, I know you've been home this entire year from COVID. So now that you're back walking and you got that walk in, how did you feel?
So, I mean, I do try to take a walk every day. I try because my work-life balance is not great. So I try to make that my balance. It's getting like, 40-minute quick, but I wasn't able to, I'm not necessarily going as far and as fast because I don't tend to have a reason to walk with a strong purpose these days because I just built, instead of taking lunch, I'll go for a walk and then, I can stroll, I can take in the day.
Yes.
So to do that more purposeful walk. And I felt actually great. Like I could still feel, I think I was about maybe a 3, and below was like around there,
So
two,
it was
3.
manageable.
It is super manageable.
Okay.
Thank God.
Yeah.
So I was able to enjoy the music, as opposed to, focusing on that. Oh, I forgot to mention the other remaining thing for me right now is I have no ankle reflexes, whatever that means. So
Yeah.
I,
What
I
does?
asked a
Yeah.
friend I asked a friend who's a physical therapist, and he said it could mean I might, because I didn't think to ask in that moment because I was just so like, what are you couldn't
Right.
have given me a diagnosis, so I
Right.
should have asked. I just was in shock.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he said I might tire out more quickly. If I'm doing cardio that's related to my feet, I might trip a little more, but I haven't.
Okay.
I mean, like and when I have, like it's been a normal amount, and I've caught myself the same as no ever. So it
Any other
really
time?
feels like, even though currently I know I don't have ankle reflexes, it's more just a thing that I know rather than something that is impacting me right now.
So it doesn't feel any different than before. It's just so but you probably won't win a race.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna win before. Never was there ever a day in my life. Maybe kindergarten.
Oh man, that's hilarious. That is,
Not an athlete. Nope.
but and we're getting close to the end, and we
Yeah,
have about
no problem.
8 or 9 minutes. So, um, you're getting better. You're still on that vitamin B12. Is there ever a point where, and I know vitamin B12 is good for us, but is there ever a point where um, you can stop taking that and not have to concern yourself with this pain, or is this something you're going to have to be dealing with the rest of your life?
It's likely I'll be fully recovered at some point. So that could take weeks or years. I mean, and it's also interesting how quickly things can go downhill with this, and then how quickly you can recover.
Right.
So as I was also reading in the group, one person, their first case of GBS, they were out, I think, for months with paralysis. Next time they got it, and they keep getting they're getting the vaccine, even though they have reactions to it. Like and it's shown to be consistent. So I don't know if they should anymore. But the
Right.
next time they got it, they had a vaccine. They were paralyzed for 10 days. And then they said that the next time after that, and I was like, next time after that, they were paralyzed for 3 days. So it's like, but it can be super intense and then super quickly go away. Or, I was talking to a woman, and she was in the ICU for 1 year and 8 months. She was asking me what I thought, because I told her my story, and she said, "No, I don't want to go through that again." And so I said, this was my story. This is not to scare you, but just sharing. This is information.
Yeah.
And
And
that's one thing about this is, even as a person who, like, I promote science and I support the vaccine, because I believe in information. I want people to have as many data points as possible to help them
yes.
as they're managing their lives. And
Right.
again, keeping in mind, this thing can be triggered from living your regular life doing nothing. It could have been triggered way before 2020, or
Right.
it could be triggered if you refuse the vaccine and then you get COVID. Like it's just something to be aware of.
Right.
In my case, it was connected. So I really want people to be aware and pay attention to your health after you get it.
So I just have one last question, if I
Yep.
may, and I anyone who's watching now or live or watching on replay, I encourage you to go into the link that I put in the chat. That's where Ayanna's medium link is, and you can actually read the story, and she breaks it down just as she did here. But in the research that you're doing, not the research, but the support group, I guess, that you're in on Facebook, are you noticing, in terms of demographics, is it us people of color? Is it everyone? Are you noticing anything there?
I don't think there are differences based on race. It feels like every person in that group is white, honestly.
Interesting. Interesting.
I haven't. It's almost and just about everyone who I've seen posts or I've responded to. And again, I've only been in the group about a month and some change. So, but and that I haven't looked through everyone. I am not
Okay.
aware of any link related to race. I know for sure I was reading there's no, greater or
Right.
lesser related to sex.
Gotcha.
Um, so yeah, it's just
Interesting.
something we just all have to be aware of. I mean, I always think, Black people need to be more aware of any health issues because we do have to advocate more for ourselves, and we do have to speak up more loudly, and let our voices be heard when we're speaking to doctors, because they are not always listening, and it's well documented
And
that we are listened to at that they listen to us far less.
far
That they
less.
deny our pain far
Right.
more.
And I don't know if that would be what your last words would be to anyone who's watching, listening, or seeing this on replay, um, about advocating for yourselves. But may it be that, or may it be something else. What would your last words be to anyone that's watching? If you had the opportunity to sit with someone, whether they have had the vaccine or whether they have not, what would your last words be concerning this particular um, thing that happened with you?
I would say to listen to your body and to trust what you're feeling. I know it can be hard. You may not want to. You may not want to go to the doctors for whatever reasons. I know we live in a country without great health insurance options for many, um, but it's important to be aware and trust what you're feeling, um, and do as much research as you can. Um, that's one thing. I know there are a lot of jokes also out there about if don't look up your symptoms, but please.
I never do. I do not like the self. That's what you pay a doctor for, right? I'm not self. I did not go to medical school, so I will not self-diagnose
No
myself.
doctor told me though that this would help me.
Well, so let me also say this. Now, while I won't self-diagnose, what I will do is I will find the cure that's outside of normal medicine,
Yeah.
because I know when we look for herbs, that those herbs are actually in the medication. Some form of those herbs are already in the medications that they are giving to us, but they want to keep us hooked on the drugs. So where you and I know what comes from the ground can actually provide the cure. So I get what you're saying. Yes.
Yes, just listen to your body, trust yourself. If you feel like something's wrong, then do what you can. Go to the doctors, go see somebody, go talk, at least call somebody, just talk to somebody. But please just don't bury your head in the sand. I made I saw my doctor, but I should have trusted my instinct to go immediately to see somebody else. And I am lucky that it only by luck that the course of this for me was mild, relatively. And again, it's only in context that I'm able to see that
Right.
because it didn't feel mild at the time. But relative to relative to being in a hospital, not moving, that is it's mild compared to that. So I count my blessings. Just advocate for yourself, pay attention to your body, and be safe and be the powerful people you are.
Amen. So we are at the end, and one of the things I will say about this conversation, Ayanna, is you weren't lucky, you were blessed. Um, Luck is something that we just hope for. Blessings is something that we get from above, and I prefer blessings over luck any day, like seriously. So I'm glad that we are sitting here having this conversation right now. Someone I know, I care about, I love, a dear friend. I'm so glad that you decided to share this story and for us to be able to have this opportunity. So my last words will basically be bye Black for life. Whatever decision you make about your health and well-being, make sure that you continue to push for and advocate for yourself. As Ayanna said, we must advocate for ourselves. So have a great evening, great Wednesday evening, and I will say bye Black for life, for the love of our people. Good night.
Good night.